User settings. User settings are settings that belongs to the current user and will affect all projects created by this particular user. To open user settings, just go to DaVinci Resolve and click Preferences and make sure you are on the User tab. First, we have UI settings. This is where you can choose things like your language and extra user interface settings like the color of the background. Then we have the Project Save and Load section. This is where you can choose settings like Live Save and Project Backups, where you can tell Resolve to create a backup of your project at fixed time intervals. Then we have the Editing section, where you can choose settings like the duration Resolve will give to solid colors it creates, for example, and the standard duration Resolve will give to still images you add to your timeline. Because it's a still image, it doesn't have a certain length. So this is where you choose how many frames or how many seconds the length of the still will be on the timeline. Then we have the color section, where you can set up multiple things, like which nodes should Resolve pick when you select a clip, and the visibility of the power windows outline. Then we have the settings that relates to Fairlight. Next, we have playback settings, where you edit settings that relates to playback, like having minimum interface updates during playback for better performance, and whether to turn performance mode on by default for all projects created by this user. Then we have the control panel section, where you can control things like the sensitivity of the dials on your panel. Then we have keyboard mapping. This is a very important section. It allows you to edit keyboard shortcuts for the current user. So all the changes here will affect all the projects created by this user. The first option here lets you choose from presets for the keyboard shortcuts. You have pre-built presets by Blackmagic. For example, if you're familiar with Final Cut shortcuts, you can choose the Final Cut preset. So if I click here, now the keyboard shortcuts will be the same as Final Cut. And here also you will find the presets that you create and save. Then we have this very important drop-down menu. To understand what it does, let's remember two things first. Resolve is a collection of multiple tabs, and your requirements for keyboard shortcuts might be different from one tab to another. You have only one keyboard. So for example, if you set the button A to perform a certain task in the color page, you still want to be able to remap the same letter to some other task in the Edit tab, for example. So in order to perform this, this is the menu where you can choose what page to edit the keyboard shortcuts for. So for example, if I choose color, all the keyboard shortcuts I edit here will work in the color page. And if I choose edit, all the changes I make here will only work in the edit page. You also have the option of global if you want your changes to affect all pages. So the same keyboard shortcuts will work the same in edit, color, and Fairlight, for example. And here you can search for certain commands to change their shortcut. For example, I will write ripple here. And here are all the commands that contains the word ripple. So this is the command and this is the shortcut. I can double click on the shortcut to change it to a new one. So for example, I'll change this to number 8. And I can also change the search method. So instead of entering a command to find what shortcut is it assigned to, I can do the opposite. I can change the search method from command to shortcut. And now I can enter a shortcut here to find what command is it assigned to. I'll just type 8 and notice that 8 is assigned to ripple delete. And finally down here, I can save, import, or export my shortcuts if I need to have the same shortcuts on another system, for example. And these were the main settings for the user in DaVinci Resolve.